They called it the Resolute, not out of respect, but mockery. The alien fleets had laughed when Earth first sent the ship into space. Its hull was patched with mismatched alloys, its weapons seemed outdated, and its engines sputtered against the sleek propulsion systems of the Targan Empire. Among the galactic nations, humans were known as latecomers, scavengers who stitched together technology they barely understood. When Earth requested a seat in the Council of Systems, the Targan Admiral Vexar Thal had only sneered. "Let them prove their worth," he had said, voice carrying through the grand chamber. "Send their little Resolute against our vanguard. It will make fine target practice." Earth accepted the challenge, not because they thought they could win, but because they had no choice. The Targans controlled the trade routes that Earth desperately needed. Without access, humanity would wither in isolation. So the call went out across the planet. Volunteers, engineers, and soldiers rushed to the hidden shipyards near Titan. Over months of sleepless nights and desperate innovation, they turned a rusting relic into humanity's last hope. Commander Elias Vorn stood on the command deck, staring at the swirling void beyond the viewport. His uniform clung to his lean frame, its crisp lines hiding the exhaustion in his eyes. Around him, the crew moved with purpose, tight-lipped, eyes hard with determination. "Status, Lieutenant Cade?" Vorn asked, without turning. Lieutenant Rika Cade's fingers danced over the holographic controls. Her dark hair clung to her sweat-dampened forehead as she scanned the data streaming in from their long-range sensors. "The Targan fleet's holding position at Vector Alpha 9, she reported. 20 warships, including 2 dreadnoughts. Vorn exhaled through his nose. 20 ships against their 1. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre waiting to happen. "Time until engagement?" 6 minutes at current trajectory. He nodded and glanced toward the communications officer, Sergeant Malik. "Any response to our hails?" Malik shook his head. "They're ignoring us, sir. Guess they're waiting for the fireworks." A murmur of bitter laughter rippled through the bridge crew. The aliens had sent no formal terms, no demand for surrender. This wasn't war, it was entertainment. But Earth had learned to survive against impossible odds. When the skies had turned black with famine, they'd clawed their way back from starvation. When plagues swept through cities, they found cures. When climate wars tore nations apart, they rebuilt stronger. Humanity didn't quit. Not now. Not ever. Vorn's gaze dropped to the small photo taped beside his console. His wife and daughter, smiling beneath a summer sun that seemed like a distant dream. He clenched his jaw. He would not fail them. "Cade, activate the catalyst core," he ordered. A hush fell over the bridge. Every crew member tensed. Activating the core meant one thing. They were going all in. No retreat. No surrender. "Are you sure, sir?" Cade's voice was low. Everyone knew the core had never been tested in real combat. "I'm sure," Vorn said. Cade's fingers hovered for a moment, then pressed the sequence. Deep within the ship, something roared to life. The deck vibrated beneath their feet as unseen energy coursed through the hull. Systems spiked, lights flickered, and every sensor flared red as the Resolute woke up. Vorn tapped the intercom. "All hands, this is the commander. Prepare for imminent combat. We face an enemy that thinks we are weak. Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of. No more jokes, no more mockery. We fight for Earth, for our families, and for our future. Vincimus aut morimur. We conquer or we die." The crew answered with a shout that echoed through every corridor. On the viewport, the Targan fleet grew larger, sleek vessels of silver and black, bristling with plasma cannons and torpedoes. The largest dreadnought, Vexaris, led the charge, its prow glowing with the crimson light of its annihilation array. "They're locking weapons," Cade shouted. "Evasive maneuvers! Vorn barked. Thrusters flared as the Resolute twisted aside, just as the first plasma bolts streaked past. The hull shuddered from the shockwaves, but the ship held together. "Return fire!" The main cannons boomed, but the alien shields absorbed the blasts without flinching. Laughter echoed over the comms, Targan voices jeering as human weapons failed to penetrate their defenses. "They're closing fast," Malik warned. Vorn's pulse hammered. They had one shot at this. If the catalyst core failed... No, he couldn't think that way. "Cade, initiate catalyst overdrive." "Sir, that'll push the reactor beyond safe limits." "Do it!" Cade's hands flew across the console. Deep within the ship, the catalyst core screamed as it surged beyond its design limits. The hull groaned, but then, power. Pure, blinding energy flooded the ship. The weapons console flared to life with new targeting options that hadn't existed seconds before. Experimental pulse cannons, quantum torpedoes, and phase disruptors, systems humanity had never dared to test outside a lab, now hummed with lethal potential. Vorn's lips curled into a grim smile. Fire everything. The Resolute unleashed hell. Blue-white beams sliced through space, bypassing shields as though they were smoke. The nearest Targan cruiser exploded in a flash of shattered metal and vaporized flesh. Torpedoes streaked into the fleet, detonating in blossoms of fire that sent shockwaves cascading through their formation. The laughter on the comms vanished, replaced by panicked shouts in alien tongues. "2 ships down! No, 3!" Cade shouted. The Targans scrambled to return fire, but the Resolute danced through their barrage with impossible speed. Plasma bolts skimmed the hull, but the ship's reinforced armor held. Vorn's fingers tightened around the armrests of his chair. They weren't done yet. "Target the dreadnought Vexaris! Maximum yield!" The ship's pulse cannons charged, drawing from the overdriven core until their barrels glowed white-hot. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems pushed past safety limits. Sparks rained from overloaded circuits, and then the cannons fired. A lance of pure destruction lanced across space, slamming into the Vexaris with the force of a dying star. Metal melted, shields collapsed. The dreadnought's armor crumpled like paper before its core detonated in a blinding fireball that consumed everything nearby. Silence fell over the battlefield. Smoke and debris drifted through the void, where once an invincible fleet had stood. Vorn exhaled slowly. "Status?" Cade's voice was hoarse. "All enemy ships destroyed, sir. We did it." The crew erupted in cheers, but Vorn merely stared at the distant stars. Victory had come at a cost. Systems fried, hull damaged, the catalyst core now a ticking time bomb. They'd bought humanity a future, but the war was far from over. Because somewhere out there, the rest of the Targan Empire was waiting, and they wouldn't underestimate Earth again. Vorn leaned forward, eyes hard with determination. Plot a course home. This was just the beginning. The fires still burned within the Resolute's engine core. Systems sputtered, conduits sparked, and acrid smoke clung to the air like a reminder of how close they had come to destruction. But against all odds, they had survived. Outside the viewport, debris from the Targan fleet drifted like shattered gravestones. Commander Elias Vorn leaned against the central console, hands gripping the edges so tightly his knuckles went white. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only exhaustion in its wake. Yet his mind refused to rest. This victory, if it could be called that, wasn't the end. The Targan Empire would not forgive this humiliation. "Damage report," he ordered, his voice rough from smoke and strain. Lieutenant Rika Cade coughed into her sleeve before responding. "Hull integrity at 62%. Weapons systems are fried. Overdrive pushed the pulse cannons beyond limit. quantum torpedoes depleted, shields holding at 30%. But the catalyst core is unstable. If we push it again, we risk a full reactor meltdown. Vorn absorbed the news with a grim nod. It was better than he'd expected. Engines? Sublight propulsion is functional, but FTL drives are offline. We're dead in the water until engineering can reroute power. Vorn turned to the engineering officer, Lieutenant Commander Harris Doyle, whose soot-streaked face spoke of the chaos below decks. Doyle wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. I can get us moving again, Commander, but the catalyst core's shot. Too much strain. We might stabilize it for basic power, but any more combat... Doyle shook his head. We won't survive another engagement. The air seemed heavier in the silence that followed. They had escaped one nightmare, only to drift into another. Understood, Vorn said. Do what you can. We need to get home. Doyle saluted and hurried from the bridge, leaving Vorn to face the crew's anxious eyes. They all knew the truth. The Targans would come for them, not just to destroy the Resolute, but to make an example of Earth. Vorn pressed the intercom button. His voice echoed through every corridor. This is Commander Vorn. We've won a battle today that no one thought possible. Each of you stood against impossible odds and proved that humanity will not be broken. But our mission isn't over. The Targans will return, stronger than before. We must bring word to Earth and prepare for what comes next. Hold fast. We are not defeated. Vorn out. He released the button and let out a slow breath, aware of the weight pressing against his chest. Victory always came with a cost. Lieutenant Cade, he said, scan for any Targan survivors or distress beacons. I don't want them sending a signal before we get out of here. Yes, sir. Cade's hands moved swiftly over the controls, her eyes scanning the flickering data feeds. A minute passed, then another, her brow furrowed. Commander, I'm detecting faint life signs from the wreckage of the dreadnought Vixaris. Vorn's head snapped toward her. Survivors? Possibly. The readings are weak. Could be trapped crew members in a sealed compartment. There's also an intact data core broadcasting a low-power distress pulse. The signal isn't strong enough to reach the nearest Targan fleet, but if they get closer... Vorn's mind raced. A distress beacon would bring the Targans down on them like vultures. But the data core, the secrets inside, could change the tide of the entire war. Weapon specifications, fleet deployments, vulnerabilities. The information was too valuable to ignore. Commander, we can't risk it, Malik warned from the comm station. If the Targans find us here... I know the risks, Vorn cut him off. But that data could save Earth. We'll launch a retrieval team, prep Shuttle Alpha 1 and get a security team ready. Cade hesitated. And the survivors? Vorn's eyes narrowed as he weighed the consequences. Taking prisoners would slow them down, and the Targans would show no mercy if the roles were reversed. But leaving them to die... Rescue any survivors you find. But the data core is the priority. Move fast. Within minutes, the shuttle bay echoed with the hum of engines. Alpha 1, a sleek gunship retrofitted from scavenged alien tech, hovered above the deck as its crew boarded. Clad in armored exosuits, their visors gleamed with the blue glow of combat HUDs. Among them was Lieutenant Cade, having volunteered to lead the mission despite Vorn's protests. Stay sharp, Lieutenant, Vorn said over the comms as she secured her harness. Don't worry, Commander. I'll bring back your prize. With a hiss of hydraulics, the shuttle launched into the void, weaving through drifting debris toward the shattered remains of the Vexaris. Fires still flickered within the torn hull as vents expelled atmosphere into space. The ship had been split nearly in half by the Resolute's final salvo, yet some parts remained intact, like the black heart of a beast refusing to die. Approaching the wreckage, Cade reported. Minimal power signatures, no defensive systems detected. Docking at the aft maintenance bay. The shuttle latched onto the hull with a dull clang. Inside, the airlock cycled open, revealing a corridor bathed in flickering red light. Twisted metal and scorched walls bore witness to the ship's final moments. "Keep your weapons ready," Cade ordered as she stepped into the corridor, plasma rifle raised. "We don't know what's waiting for us." Her boots echoed against the deck as they advanced. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting jagged shadows across the walls. Somewhere deep within the wreckage, faint hissing sounds echoed. Coolant leaks or escaping air, or something else. "This way," Cade said, consulting her scanner. "The data core should be 3 decks down in the central archives." Moving cautiously, the team descended through the wreckage, navigating collapsed bulkheads and sparking conduits. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of burnt wiring and ozone. "We're close," Cade whispered. Rounding a corner, they entered a chamber lined with crystalline storage nodes, alien technology that glimmered faintly even in near darkness. At the center stood the data core, a black sphere pulsing with faint blue light. "Got it." Cade motioned to the tech specialist, who moved forward and began connecting a portable interface. Then the shadows moved. Cade spun around as a figure lunged from the darkness. Targan soldier, bloodied but still lethal. Its blade caught the light as it slashed toward her throat. Cade twisted aside, the blade slicing through the air inches from her visor. She raised her plasma rifle and fired. The blast caught the Targan soldier in the chest, hurling him backward into the wall. His armor sizzled as molten metal dripped onto the floor. But before she could catch her breath, more shadows stirred in the corridor beyond. "Contact! Multiple hostiles!" she shouted into the comm. The team fell into formation as Targan warriors emerged from the darkness. 6, their crimson eyes gleaming with hatred. Their armor, scarred and scorched, bore the marks of the dreadnought's destruction, yet they moved with deadly precision. "Hold them off," Cade ordered. "We need that data core." Blaster fire erupted in the confined space. Blue plasma bolts streaked through the air, striking armor and flesh with searing force. The Targans returned fire with pulse rifles, their shots tearing through walls and consoles. Sparks and debris rained down as the chamber shook from the exchange. "Almost there!" the tech specialist shouted, frantically tapping at the portable interface. "Data extraction at 70%! Hold them back!" Cade dropped to one knee, firing in controlled bursts. Her shots found their marks, but the Targans pressed forward relentlessly. One warrior lunged into melee range, his blade flashing toward her throat. She parried with the stock of her rifle and drove her elbow into his face, sending him sprawling. Another came at her from the side, but a blast from her teammate's weapon punched through his skull. 85%, the tech called out. Another Targan surged forward, faster, stronger. His armor gleamed with officer insignia, and his eyes burned with fury. Cade barely raised her rifle in time. The alien's blade sheared through the barrel of her weapon, sparks flying as the severed metal clattered to the floor. Cade stumbled back, reaching for her sidearm, but the Targan was too fast. He seized her by the throat, lifting her off the ground with ease. Her helmet's display flickered with warnings as oxygen levels dropped. Cade struggled against the iron grip, kicking and clawing, but the alien's strength was overwhelming. "Extraction complete," the tech shouted. Cade's vision blurred. She saw the tech yank the portable drive from the interface, securing humanity's prize. But the officer holding her sneered through sharp teeth, his grip tightening. "You dare defy the Targan Empire?" he growled in accented standard. "I'll send your corpse back to your world as a warning." Cade's fingers scrabbled against her belt, finding the hilt of her combat knife. With the last of her strength, she drove the blade into the alien's neck. The Targan roared in agony, his grip loosening just enough for her to break free. She hit the ground hard, gasping for air, then snatched her sidearm and fired point-blank. The alien's skull snapped back as blue plasma punched through his head, and he collapsed in a smoking heap. "Fall back! Move!" Cade shouted, her voice hoarse. The team scrambled back toward the airlock as more Targans poured into the corridor. Plasma fire chased them through the wreckage, striking walls and sending molten shrapnel into the air. Cade fired over her shoulder as she ran, taking down another warrior before his shot could catch her tech specialist. "Almost there. Airlock in sight." A pulse blast struck one of her soldiers square in the back. He dropped without a sound, smoke rising from the hole in his armor. "Keep moving," Cade yelled, dragging the tech forward as debris rained from the ceiling. The corridor trembled. Secondary explosions were rippling through the wreck, tearing the ship apart. They reached the airlock just as another Targan appeared from the side passage, raising his rifle. Cade spun and fired first. The plasma bolt punched through the alien's chest, but momentum carried his shot wild. The pulse blast seared across Cade's side, and she cried out as pain flared through her ribs. "Lieutenant!" the tech shouted, catching her before she fell. "Get inside!" she gasped, forcing herself forward. Her side burned with every step, but she stumbled into the airlock as alarms blared through the wreckage. "Seal it!" she ordered. The airlock doors slammed shut just as the corridor outside collapsed in a cascade of metal and fire. "Alpha 1, we're clear! Get us out of here!" Cade shouted into her comm. "Copy that! Initiating detachment sequence!" The shuttle's engines roared as it broke free from the wreckage, accelerating through the debris field. Shockwaves from the dreadnought's final collapse rattled the hull, but the pilot kept steady. "Brace for jump! We're getting the hell out of here!" The stars outside blurred as the shuttle accelerated toward the Resolute, slipping free of the battlefield's deadly grasp. Cade slumped against the bulkhead, gasping for breath as adrenaline faded into exhaustion. Her side burned fiercely, but she pressed a gloved hand to the wound, gritting her teeth against the pain. "Status on the data core?" she managed. The tech clutched the portable drive tightly, his face pale but determined. "Safe and intact. We've got it, Lieutenant. Everything the Targans had. Ship schematics, fleet movements, even classified comm protocols. This could change everything." Cade exhaled slowly, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. They had what they needed. Proof that humanity could not only survive this war, but win it. "Good. That's good," she murmured, closing her eyes against the pain as the hum of the shuttle's engines carried them home. The Resolute's docking bay shuddered as the shuttle touched down with a metallic hiss. The moment the hatch opened, medics rushed forward, their boots clanging against the steel deck. Lieutenant Reka Cade staggered down the ramp, leaning against the tech specialist for support, her side burning with every breath. Blood seeped through the fabric of her uniform, but she waved off the nearest medic. "Later," she rasped. "Get this to the commander first." The tech clutched the portable drive tightly and nodded before sprinting towards the bridge. Cade's legs gave out as adrenaline faded. She collapsed onto one knee, gasping for air. "Lieutenant, you're losing blood," a medic began, but she cut him off. "Patch it up. Quickly." She clenched her jaw as the medic applied biofoam to the plasma burn. The chemical hissed as it sealed her wound, numbing the pain but leaving a dull ache beneath her ribs. The bandages came next, tight, efficient, and far from comfortable. "Good enough," she muttered. Ignoring the medic's protests, she pushed herself to her feet and headed for the bridge. Commander Elias Vorn stood at the central console, eyes fixed on the tactical display as systems flickered back online one by one. The ship still bore the scars of battle: damaged engines, compromised shields, and fried weapons systems. But against all odds, they had survived. When the tech specialist rushed onto the bridge, clutching the portable drive like a sacred relic, Vorn turned sharply. "Do you have it?" "Yes, sir. Full extraction successful." The tech handed over the drive with trembling hands. Vorn took it carefully, as though holding Earth's future in his palm. Without hesitation, he inserted the drive into the main console. The holographic display flared to life, casting flickering blue light across the bridge. Lines of alien script scrolled past, interspersed with schematics of Targan warships, troop deployments, and classified communications protocols. A ripple of awe spread through the crew. Even Malik, usually quick with a sarcastic remark, could only whisper, "Holy hell!" Vorn's eyes narrowed as he scanned the data. Weapon schematics showed weaknesses previously unknown: shield modulation frequencies, structural vulnerabilities, power relay hubs. Fleet formations, supply lines, and patrol routes painted a picture of an empire confident in its invincibility and blind to its flaws. "Lieutenant Cade?" he asked without looking up. "Here, sir." He turned. Her uniform was scorched, bloodied, but her eyes burned with determination. "Report." "Targan survivors tried to stop us. We lost one of our own, but we secured the data core. The wreck collapsed before we could search for additional survivors." Vorn studied her for a moment, his gaze softening slightly. "You did well, Lieutenant. Get some rest. You've earned it." "Respectfully, sir, I'd rather see what we risked our lives for." Vorn allowed a faint smile before turning back to the data. With a few swift commands, he isolated the most critical files: a comprehensive list of Targan fleet deployments, encrypted orders from High Command, and a classified directive labeled Operation Dominion. "This is it," he murmured. "Proof of their invasion plans. They're preparing a full-scale assault on Earth and its colonies." Gasps echoed across the bridge. "How soon?" Malik asked. Vorn scanned the encrypted timestamps. "Less than 3 months, and Earth has no idea what's coming." Silence fell. The weight of that truth pressed against every chest. Vorn's fingers tightened around the console's edge. "Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. We need to deliver this data before it's too late." "FTL drive's still down, sir," Doyle reminded him over comms. "I'm doing what I can, but then do it faster." "Yes, sir." Vorn exhaled slowly. Even at sublight speeds, they could cover the distance. But every hour lost brought the Targan fleets closer. "Commander," Cade's voice cut through the tension as she pointed to the tactical display. "Incoming signal. Unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity." Vorn's pulse spiked. "Targan?" "Unknown. Hold on, I'm decrypting. It's human, sir." A ripple of confusion passed through the crew. "Human? Out here?" Malik asked. "Patch them through," Vorn ordered. The comms crackled with static before a voice emerged, female, urgent, and strained. "This is Captain Elena Saros of the Argent Dawn. We're a covert reconnaissance vessel from Earth's Defense Command. Your transponder identifies you as the ESS Resolute. Confirm your status. Are you carrying classified alien data?" Vorn's eyes narrowed. "This is Commander Elias Vorn of the Resolute. We have secured critical intelligence regarding an imminent Targan invasion. We are en route to Earth to deliver this information. Identify your mission, Argent Dawn." Static crackled. Then Saros replied, her tone sharp with urgency. "Commander, you must change course immediately. The Targans have deployed hunter-killer squads to intercept you. They know you have the data. We've been tracking their pursuit since the battle. You won't make it to Earth unless you evade now." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Commander," Cade said quietly, "if they're tracking us, Earth is in danger too. We could lead them right to our homeworld." Vorn's mind raced. Delivering the data to Earth was their priority, but if the Targans intercepted them first. Captain Saros, what do you propose? Our ship is faster and equipped with stealth technology. Transfer the data to us, and we'll deliver it to Earth while you lead the Targans away. Vorn hesitated. Trusting another vessel with Earth's last hope was a risk he hadn't planned for. But time was against them. The longer they waited, the closer the enemy came. Beside him, Cade stepped forward, her voice low but firm. Sir, we've come too far to lose this chance. But if we're captured, Earth loses everything. We have to trust them. Vorn's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed against handing over the data, but logic demanded otherwise. Prepare the data transfer, he ordered. Yes, sir. Cade began the upload, her fingers moving swiftly as encrypted files streamed toward the Argent Dawn. Transfer at 70%, she reported, eyes flicking to the sensor screen. Wait, multiple Targan vessels inbound, 2 ships closing fast. Vorn spun toward Malik. ETA? Less than 5 minutes. They're armed and ready for blood. Vorn's heart pounded. Cade, status on the transfer? 85%. 90. The deck trembled as the Resolute's damaged engines pushed toward their limits. Come on, Vorn muttered. 98. Transfer complete. Argent Dawn, do you have the data? Vorn barked. Confirmed, Resolute. We have it. Breaking contact. Good luck. The transmission cut out, and the reconnaissance ship vanished into the void, its stealth systems engaging instantly. Enemy ships entering firing range, Malik shouted. Vorn's eyes burned with resolve. The mission was complete, but their own fight was just beginning. All hands, battle stations, he ordered. The battered Resolute turned to face its pursuers as plasma fire lit the darkness once more. The Resolute shuddered as plasma blasts slammed into its damaged hull, sending shockwaves through every corridor. Alarms blared, casting the bridge in flashing red light. Commander Elias Vorn gripped the console to steady himself. His gaze locked on the tactical display. 2 Targan warships closed in fast, sleek predators hunting wounded prey. Shields at 20% and falling, Lieutenant Reka Cade shouted over the chaos. Her fingers flew across the controls, rerouting what little power they had left into defensive systems. Sparks rained from overhead conduits, and acrid smoke thickened the air. Return fire, Vorn barked. Sir, our pulse cannons are offline. Quantum torpedoes depleted, Malik shouted from the weapons console, frustration etched on his face. Vorn's mind raced. They were outgunned, outmatched, and barely holding together after the last battle. With no chance of victory, their only hope was survival. But retreat meant leading the Targans straight to Earth. That could not happen. Evasive maneuvers! Bring us around! Make them chase us away from Earth's trajectory! The Resolute twisted through space, engines groaning under the strain. Plasma blasts streaked past, some scoring direct hits that sent tremors through the deck. Structural integrity dropped with each impact, warning sirens wailing like screams. Enemy ships closing to boarding range, Cade warned. Vorn's pulse spiked. If the Targans boarded, there would be no escape. Prepare countermeasures. Commander, Malik shouted, cutting him off. Incoming transmission, open frequency. On screen, Vorn ordered. The main viewport flickered, revealing the snarling visage of a Targan captain. His crimson eyes glowed with malice beneath the black ridges of his brow, and jagged scars marked his slate-gray skin. Human vessel, this is Captain Zorak Mal of the Targan Hunter Fleet. Your defiance ends here. His voice was a guttural growl, thick with contempt. Surrender, and I may grant your crew a swift death. Resist, and I will burn your world to ashes. Vorn stepped forward, eyes hard with defiance. You've already lost. The data you sought is beyond your reach. Earth knows your plans, and we will be ready. Zorak's lips peeled back in a sneer. It won't matter. We will break your world piece by piece until there is nothing left but dust and echoes. The transmission cut off. Plasma cannons charged on the enemy ships, their barrels glowing with lethal energy. "Brace for impact!" Cade shouted. The first salvo hit hard. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the deck lurched violently. Crew members were thrown from their stations as emergency lights flickered. "Shields down! Hull breaches on decks 4, 6, and 9, Malik reported, his voice strained. Vorn clenched his fists. They had to buy time. Every second counted. "Cade, can we reboot the catalyst core?" Her fingers hesitated over the controls. "Sir, if we push it now, the reactor could—" "No choice," Vorn cut her off. "Do it." Cade swallowed hard and initiated the sequence. Deep within the ship, the dormant core groaned to life. Systems flickered as energy surged through damaged conduits. Warning lights flashed red, but power readings spiked across the board. "Catalyst core online at 50%, 60, 70. The ship shuddered violently as another barrage hit. Sparks rained down, and acrid smoke billowed from the walls. The overhead lights flickered, casting shadows across the bridge. 80%! Reactor temperature rising, approaching critical threshold! Vorn gripped the console. "Malik, target their lead ship. Maximum yield." "Yes, sir!" Malik's fingers flew over the controls as weapons systems powered up with a low, throbbing hum. The pulse cannons, overcharged beyond their limits, glowed white-hot as targeting locks fell into place. Firing, the Resolute unleashed a blinding barrage of plasma fire, each shot tearing through space with lethal force. The lead Targan ship, sleek and predatory, took the brunt of the assault. Its shields flared, then shattered as the pulse cannons punched through its armor. Explosions blossomed along its hull, venting atmosphere and debris into space. The ship lurched, its engines sputtering as secondary detonations rocked its core. "Direct hit! They're losing power!" Cade shouted. The second Targan vessel swerved to flank them, plasma cannons charging for a final blow. "Evasive maneuvers, now!" Vorn yelled. The Resolute twisted aside as plasma bolts streaked past, but one shot clipped the starboard engine. The ship bucked violently, and the lights flickered as systems faltered. "Engine 1 offline. Structural integrity critical," Malik warned. Vorn's mind spun through options. They couldn't withstand another barrage, but they could still buy time. "Cade, overload the catalyst core." Her eyes widened. "Sir, that'll destroy the ship." "I know." His voice was calm, resolute. "Set a collision course for the lead Targan vessel. We're taking them with us." The crew stared at him in stunned silence. "We've done our duty," Vorn said. "Earth will survive because of us. Now let's make sure the Targans never forget the price of their arrogance." Cade swallowed hard, then nodded. Her hands moved swiftly, locking in the final sequence. Warning klaxons howled as the reactor approached critical mass. "Collision course locked. 30 seconds to impact." The Targan ships scrambled to evade, but the Resolute surged forward, engines burning at full thrust. Plasma fire battered its hull, but nothing could stop its final charge. 15 seconds. Vorn stepped forward, gripping the console with both hands. His gaze never wavered from the viewport, where the enemy loomed closer with each passing second. "This is for Earth," he whispered. 5 seconds. Before the final moment, a flash of movement appeared on the tactical display. "Commander, Argent Dawn inbound," Cade shouted. The stealth ship decloaked behind the second Targan vessel and fired a precision strike straight into its engines. The Targan ship bucked violently as explosions ripped through its hull. Plasma vents erupted in gouts of flame, and its power core overloaded. detonating in a blinding flash that consumed the ship in seconds. Impact in 3, 2... Suddenly, the comms flared to life. "Resolute, break off, now!" Captain Saros shouted. Vorn slammed his fist onto the console, aborting the collision sequence with milliseconds to spare. The catalyst core's overload cascade halted, though sparks flew as systems strained to stabilize. The Resolute swerved past the remaining Targon vessel, missing it by mere meters as flames and debris streaked across the hull. "Enemy flagship firing!" Malik shouted. But before the shot could land, the Argent Dawn fired again, twin pulse cannons striking the weakened Targon vessel dead on. Armor plates melted and buckled as the ship twisted violently, its engines rupturing in a chain reaction that engulfed it in fire and shrapnel. Silence fell across the battlefield. Only drifting debris remained where the Targon hunters had stood. Vorn staggered back from the console, heart hammering in his chest. Sweat clung to his brow, and the weight of exhaustion pressed down like lead. But they were alive. Somehow, against all odds, they had survived. The comms crackled. "Argent Dawn to Resolute. Looks like we made it in time," Captain Saros said, her voice calm but heavy with the echoes of battle. Vorn exhaled slowly. "You saved us. We owe you our lives." "And Earth owes you its future," Saros replied. "Thanks to your sacrifice, humanity has a fighting chance." Vorn looked around the battered bridge, the crew exhausted but standing tall. Despite everything, they had endured. And though the war was far from over, this battle would be remembered as the day humanity proved it would never bow. "Set course for Earth," Vorn ordered softly. "Let's go home." As the battered Resolute limped toward distant stars, its crew stood a little taller, because they knew this was only the beginning. And next time, humanity would be ready. The legends spoke of a warship that defied all logic, a vessel whispered about in the dark corridors of military strategy meetings, scoffed at by alien tacticians, and dismissed as mere human myth. It was said to be faster than light itself, impervious to enemy fire, and capable of appearing where no fleet had dared venture. They called it the Phantom of Earth, a warship born of human imagination, a fairy tale meant to keep humanity hopeful in its darkest hours. But then, in the middle of the Battle of Orion's Maw, it appeared. The Galactic Dominion, a vast empire of alien warlords, had spent decades grinding humanity down. Earth's colonies were in ruins, its fleets scattered, its military leaders desperate. The Dominion's flagship, Gorath Prime, led 1,000 ships against the last remnants of human resistance, near the dying red star of Orion's Maw. Admiral Zorveth of the Dominion stood on his command deck, watching the battle unfold through the holographic projections. It was another slaughter. The human fleet, outgunned and outnumbered, was breaking apart like glass under a hammer. And then, without warning, the Dominion's long-range scanners flared with an impossible reading. A ship, no, a ghost, emerged from nowhere, directly in the middle of the Dominion's formation. Its black hull gleamed like the void itself, absorbing every scan, every sensor pulse. It moved in ways that defied physics, phasing in and out of their detection fields like a mirage in space. One moment, it was behind their front line. The next, it was within their command formation. The Dominion's ships opened fire in a blind panic, but their beams and missiles passed through the ghostly warship as if it were nothing more than a dream. And then it struck. A single burst of energy lashed out, not in a straight beam, but in a spiraling arc that slithered through space like a living thing. The Dominion's first battleship, Vurak's Claw, exploded into a fiery bloom, its shields utterly useless. The energy pulse ricocheted from ship to ship, carving through hulls, igniting reactors, leaving devastation in its wake. Zorveth staggered back, his heart's pounding. "Impossible," he hissed. Across the human fleet, desperate soldiers and commanders stared at their screens, unable to believe what they were seeing. For years, they had heard whispers of the Phantom of Earth, the ship of legend. But none had believed it real. Captain Elias Drake sat in his battered command chair, eyes wide as he stared at the phantom ship now dancing through the Dominion's fleet. "I thought it was just a story," he muttered. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Vega, whispered, "Apparently, so did they." The battle was no longer a massacre of humans, it was a massacre of the Dominion. The ghost ship moved like a specter of death, striking and vanishing, reappearing where no ship should be. One by one, the Dominion's mighty vessels were torn apart, until even Gorath Prime itself shuddered under its invisible wrath. Admiral Zorveth made the only choice he could. He screamed the retreat order. The Dominion, once confident in its victory, fled in terror. And in the silent, shattered remains of Orion's maw, the ghost ship lingered for just a moment longer. As the last Dominion ships vanished into the void, it flickered once, and then was gone. Captain Drake exhaled, barely realizing he had been holding his breath. The battle was over, and humanity had won. But one question remained. Where had the Phantom of Earth come from? And where had it gone? The war was not over yet. But for the first time in decades, the Dominion knew fear. The journey back to Earth was filled with uneasy silence. The battle should have been a victory worth celebrating, yet every officer aboard the HSS Valor felt the same gnawing uncertainty. What had they just witnessed? What was the Phantom of Earth? And if it was truly on their side, why did it remain hidden? Captain Elias Drake sat in the war room, staring at the holographic projections of the battle. The Dominion's fleet had been torn apart as if by an invisible predator. Their best weapons had failed. Their strongest ships had crumbled. But how? A knock at the door snapped him from his thoughts. Lieutenant Vega stepped inside, her face set in grim determination. "Sir," she said, "Admiral Kepler is requesting an immediate debrief upon arrival." Drake exhaled. Of course he is. Kepler was Earth's highest-ranking military official, a hardened veteran who had seen humanity pushed to the brink time and time again. If anyone would demand answers, it was him. Vega hesitated. "Sir, there's something else." Drake frowned. "What is it?" She stepped forward, lowering her voice. "We recovered a single, uncorrupted data file from the battle. It's incomplete, but—" She pulled up a holopad and turned it toward him. Drake leaned forward. The screen displayed a fragment of distorted footage. Grainy, chaotic, filled with static. But then, for the briefest of moments, it became clear. A ship. A massive ship. Not human. Not Dominion. Something else entirely. Its surface was blacker than the void itself, shifting like liquid metal, and its form was never entirely still. But one thing stood out. Etched into its hull, barely visible, was a single ancient symbol. Drake's breath caught in his throat. It was an Earth symbol. "Where did this come from?" he whispered. Vega's voice was tight. "It was buried deep in our system logs, almost like it wanted us to find it." A cold shiver ran down Drake's spine. That symbol, it was old. Older than Earth's interstellar age. It had been seen in the ruins of Mars, in deep-sea wrecks on Earth, in the whispered myths of long-dead civilizations. It was a mark of something lost to time, something that should not exist. The Phantom of Earth wasn't just some secret weapon. It was something far older, and it had just revealed itself. As the HSS Valor sped toward Earth, Drake knew one thing. Whatever had saved them at Orion's Maw, it had its own purpose. And they were about to find out what it was. Earth loomed in the distance, a shining blue beacon of humanity's last refuge. The HSS Valor cut through the void, escorted by 2 other battle-worn cruisers that had barely survived Orion's Maw. But despite their return, there were no cheers, no celebrations. Captain Elias Drake stood rigid on the bridge, eyes locked on the incoming transmission from Earth's High Command. The moment they entered orbit, Admiral Kepler's stern face appeared on the main display. His silver hair was cropped short, his uniform pressed to perfection, but there was no mistaking the tension in his jaw. "Captain Drake," Kepler said without preamble. "You're 2 hours late." Drake crossed his arms. "We had to make sure we weren't being followed, sir." Kepler's eyes narrowed. "And? Were you?" Drake hesitated, then shook his head. "Not by anything we could detect." Kepler leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "We need to talk, face to face. I want you and your senior officers in War Room Alpha in 30 minutes. The transmission cut before Drake could respond. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Vega muttered beside him. "He's in a fantastic mood." Drake sighed. "Let's not keep him waiting." 30 minutes later, Drake, Vega, and Chief Engineer Ramos stood in the war room beneath Earth's military headquarters. The room was dim, lit only by the glowing holographic table in the center. Around it stood Admiral Kepler and 3 other high-ranking officers. "Sit," Kepler ordered. Drake and his officers obeyed. Kepler wasted no time. "Tell me exactly what happened at Orion's Maw." Drake recounted the battle in detail, the hopeless odds, the sudden appearance of the ghost ship, its impossible movements, the devastating destruction it had unleashed upon the Dominion fleet. When he finished, Kepler's expression was unreadable. "You're telling me the Phantom of Earth is real?" Drake nodded. "And it isn't just real, it's something else, something we don't understand." He slid the holopad across the table, displaying the recovered image of the strange ship with the Earth symbol etched into its hull. Kepler's jaw tightened. He stared at the symbol for several long moments before finally saying, "This isn't the first time we've seen this." Drake's eyes widened. "What?" Kepler tapped a command into the table. Multiple images appeared. Ancient carvings from lost human civilizations, faded blueprints from black-budget military projects, and distorted footage of something lurking in deep space, long before Earth had even left its solar system. "That symbol," Kepler said grimly, "has been appearing throughout human history. Long before we had the technology to reach the stars." Vega whispered, "Then, what the hell is this thing?" Kepler took a deep breath, as if considering whether to speak. Finally, he said, "There was a project." Project Revenant Drake sat up straighter. "I've never heard of it." "You wouldn't have," Kepler said. "It was buried before you were even born." He pressed another command. A classified document flickered to life in the holographic display. The text was filled with redacted sections, but what was left sent chills through Drake's spine. Project Revenant. Objective, unknown origin, unknown status, terminated, inconclusive. Below the text was a grainy image of a massive structure being built on Earth centuries ago. A warship, hidden beneath the Arctic ice, buried before humanity had even discovered faster-than-light travel. "We didn't build the Phantom of Earth," Kepler said. "We found it." A heavy silence filled the room. Drake finally spoke. "And you're just telling us this now?" Kepler gave him a hard look. "Because until today we thought it was dead." Drake stared at the image, his mind racing. If humanity hadn't built the Phantom, then who had? And more importantly, why had it returned now? Then the alarms blared. A voice crackled over the comms. Unidentified object inbound. Extreme velocity. It's static. Drake and the officers bolted for the nearest screen. In orbit, descending toward Earth, was the Phantom of Earth. And this time, it wasn't alone. The war room erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled to their stations. Analysts barked orders into comms, and the holographic display filled with red warning markers. Captain Elias Drake barely heard any of it. His eyes were locked on the live orbital feed. The Phantom of Earth loomed above the planet, its black, shifting form blotting out stars as it descended. But that wasn't what sent ice through his veins. It was the others. 5 smaller ships, sleek, unnatural, with the same liquid metal hull, had appeared alongside it. Their formations were too precise, their movements eerily synchronized. Drake turned to Admiral Kepler. You said this thing was buried on Earth. Kepler's face was pale. It was. Then what the hell are they? Drake demanded, pointing at the unknown ships. Kepler didn't answer. The main comms officer's voice crackled through the speakers. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Phantom. The room fell silent. Put it through, Kepler said. The holographic display flickered. A deep, distorted voice, neither fully human nor alien, filled the room. We have returned. Drake clenched his fists. Who are you? A pause. Then, we are the Forgotten. The word sent a chill through every officer present. Kepler leaned forward. You fought for us at Orion's Maw. Why? What do you want? The voice remained eerily calm. It was not your war to lose. Drake narrowed his eyes. And what war is ours? The display changed. The view of Earth was replaced by a star map, one stretching far beyond known human space. Then, red markers began appearing. Hundreds, thousands, a storm of hostile signatures. They are coming. Kepler's breath hitched. Who? The voice whispered. The ones who erased us. The war room fell deathly still. Drake exchanged a look with Vega. The same thought passed between them. The Dominion had been humanity's greatest enemy for decades. But now, it seemed, they were nothing more than a prelude, and whatever was coming next, it had once been powerful enough to wipe an entire species from history. The Phantom of Earth hadn't appeared to save humanity. It had returned to prepare them. The war room remained eerily silent as the weight of the revelation settled over the officers. The Phantom of Earth had spoken. They are coming. Captain Elias Drake stared at the star map filled with hostile red markers. The Dominion had nearly wiped out humanity on its own, so who or what could be worse? Admiral Kepler's voice was steady, but there was a barely concealed edge of fear beneath it. Clarify, who erased you? The Phantom's response was immediate. The architects. A hush fell over the room. Kepler exchanged a glance with his intelligence officer, but no recognition flickered across anyone's face. We have no records of such a species. The Phantom's voice rumbled. You were not meant to. Drake's mind raced. You're saying they erased you? And then erased the memory of you? A pause. Correct. The officers around the room shifted uneasily. If this was true, they weren't just dealing with conquerors. They were dealing with something that could rewrite history itself. Lieutenant Vega leaned forward. Why now? If these architects destroyed you, why haven't they come for us before? The Phantom hesitated. They left you unshaped. You were small, weak, unworthy of correction. Drake exhaled slowly. Until now. Humanity had finally grown beyond what the architects considered insignificant, and now they were coming to fix their mistake. Kepler's eyes hardened. How much time do we have? Uncertain. Their reach is vast, their return inevitable. A new kind of silence fell. Not shock, not fear. A cold, calculating realization. This was no longer a war for survival. It was a war against something so old, so powerful, that it had already erased an entire civilization. Drake squared his shoulders. Then we need to fight. Kepler nodded. Agreed. But we don't know their weapons, their numbers, their technology. We're fighting ghosts. The Phantom's voice hummed, almost amused. Not alone. A new image appeared in the holographic display. Deep space coordinates. There are others. Drake leaned in. Other what? Survivors. The officers exchanged startled looks. You mean, there are others like you? Vega asked. Pieces of the Forgotten remain, scattered, hiding, waiting. Drake felt his pulse quicken. Humanity wasn't alone in this fight. If these Forgotten could be found, if they could be awakened, there might still be a chance. Kepler stared at the map, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned to Drake. You wanted a war, Captain? Congratulations. You've got one. Drake smirked. Then let's wake the dead. With that, the HSS Valor prepared to set out once more. Because somewhere in the darkness of space, hidden in the ruins of history, the last remnants of a war long forgotten were waiting. The HSS Valor launched into the void, pushing beyond the edges of human-explored space. They weren't alone. 4 other warships, the last of humanity's elite fleet, followed in formation. Their mission was simple: find the survivors, awaken the forgotten, prepare for war. Captain Elias Drake stood at the command deck, staring at the rapidly approaching jump point. The Phantom of Earth had provided coordinates. Deep in the uncharted regions of the galaxy, past Dominion-controlled space, in a sector long believed to be empty. But something was out there. Lieutenant Vega sat beside him, running calculations. Jump in 3 minutes, Captain. Drake nodded. Any changes to the readings? She hesitated. Still nothing. No distress signals, no energy spikes. If something's there, it's hiding. Drake exhaled. He turned towards the main holo-display, where a map of their path flickered with shifting data streams. Kepler's voice crackled over the comms from Earth. Valor, confirm status before jump. Drake tapped his console. All systems green, Admiral. We're ready. A pause. Then, Godspeed. The connection cut. Vega counted down. 3, 2, 1. The ship lurched as it tore through the jump gate, space folding around them. For a split second, Drake swore he saw something, an outline, a vast, shadowy form lurking in the folds of reality itself. Then they re-emerged. Silence. Darkness. And then, Captain, Vega whispered, you need to see this. Drake turned to the viewport, his breath caught. The sector wasn't empty. It was filled with wreckage. Massive ships, larger than anything humanity had ever built, drifted silently, their hulls scorched, their forms shattered. Some bore markings eerily similar to the Phantom's, while others were alien beyond recognition. It wasn't just debris. It was a graveyard. Chief Engineer Ramos muttered, "This isn't a battlefield. It's a tomb." Drake clenched his fists. "Scan everything. Look for survivors." The ships spread out, weaving through the floating ruins. Then the sensors flared. Vega sat up straight. "Sir, we've got a signal." Drake's pulse quickened. "Where?" She tapped furiously at her console. "Beneath us. Buried under one of the wrecks." A distorted, flickering message came through. "They left us. Buried. So cold." Drake's stomach turned. Someone, or something, was still alive. And they had been waiting a long time. The bridge of the HSS Valor was tense, every officer frozen as the broken transmission crackled through the speakers. "They left us buried. So cold." Captain Elias Drake felt his heartbeat hammer in his chest. Whoever or whatever was down there had been waiting for an eternity. Lieutenant Vega ran her fingers across the console, struggling to clean up the signal. "Sir, it's weak. Old tech. The frequency is fluctuating like it's barely holding together." Drake made his decision. "Get me a visual." The holo display flickered as the ship's scanners focused beneath the debris field. Then, for the first time, they saw it. A ship, larger than anything in the human fleet, older than any Dominion warship, lay entombed beneath layers of wreckage. Its hull was fractured but intact, its black surface eerily similar to the Phantom of Earth. And then the impossible happened. The ship moved. A pulse of energy flickered from its core, weak and sputtering, like a dying breath gasping for air. Vega sucked in a sharp breath. "Sir, it's still alive." Drake turned to Chief Engineer Ramos. "Can we pull it out?" Ramos rubbed his chin, eyes darting across the readings. "If we clear the debris? Maybe. But if it's still functional, we don't know how it'll react." Drake didn't hesitate. "Then let's wake it up." The Valor's thrusters roared to life, and the accompanying fleet moved in, tractor beams locked onto the massive wreck, slowly peeling away the debris that had entombed it for centuries. As the last piece drifted free, a deep, shuddering groan echoed through space. Then, the ship's lights flickered on. Drake's breath caught. The glow was dim, pulsing, almost organic. And then the transmission came through again, clearer this time. "You are late." Vega turned sharply toward Drake. "It knows us." The realization sent chills down his spine. The Phantom of Earth had led them here. To this. Drake swallowed hard and leaned forward. "This is Captain Elias Drake of the HSS Valor. Who am I speaking to?" A pause. Then the voice came, smooth and ancient, yet undeniably human. "I was once called Commander Orion." Silence. Every officer on the bridge exchanged stunned glances. Drake's throat went dry. The name, Orion, was legendary. One of Earth's first deep space captains. A pioneer. A man who had vanished over 300 years ago on an expedition beyond mapped space. But that was impossible. He should have been dead. Drake steadied his voice. "Commander Orion, you've been missing for centuries. How are you still alive?" The voice hummed through the speakers, heavy with something between sorrow and certainty. "Because we were never allowed to die." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Before Drake could respond, the ship's systems roared fully to life. The black hull shifted, the technology warping and reforming itself like liquid steel. And then, in the depths of the wreck, something else woke up. Alarms blared. Vega's voice shook. "Sir, something else is coming online inside that ship." Drake turned back to the viewport, just as a second voice broke through the transmission. Not human, not friendly. "We have been found. The architects will come." Drake felt his stomach drop. They weren't the only ones who had just woken up. The bridge of the HSS Valor fell into stunned silence. Captain Elias Drake gripped the edge of his console as Commander Orion's voice echoed through the speakers, laced with ancient sorrow. "Because we were never allowed to die." The lights on Orion's ship pulsed rhythmically, a heartbeat of something impossibly old and burdened by memories. Lieutenant Vega's voice broke the silence. "Captain, if that's really Commander Orion, then the architects have been here for centuries, watching, waiting." Drake nodded, his eyes locked on the colossal, shifting form of Orion's vessel. It was changing, its black hull undulating like liquid metal. Something ancient was waking up inside. He activated the comms. "Orion, if the architects are coming, we need to know how to fight them. What are they?" A long pause. Then Orion's voice came back, hollow and haunted. "They are the first, the makers of order. They weave reality to their design. When we grew beyond their vision, they erased us and made you." The revelation hit Drake like a physical blow. Humanity was an accident, a remnant left behind by ancient conquerors. Vega whispered, "We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting for existence." Alarms blared across the bridge. Chief Engineer Ramos shouted, "Captain, energy spikes across the wreckage field. Multiple signatures, high magnitude." Drake looked out at the void, his blood running cold. The debris around Orion's ship was moving. Hulls cracked, shattered pieces reassembling, ancient warships reforming as dark energy surged through them. Vega's face turned pale. "They're rebuilding themselves." The ships powered up, ominous red lights igniting along their spines, weapons systems locking onto the human fleet. Orion's voice came again, weak and distant. "The Guardians, left to protect the tomb. They are the first line of defense." Drake's jaw clenched. "And the second?" "The architects." The stars flickered. Space itself seemed to ripple, a tear forming in the fabric of reality. Shapes emerged, impossibly vast and incomprehensible, like shadows cast by ancient gods. Their forms defied geometry, shifting and warping, bending light around them. The architects had arrived. Admiral Kepler's voice came through the comms, urgent and grim. "Drake, get your fleet out of there, now!" Drake's eyes burned with defiance. "Negative, Admiral. If we run now, they'll follow us home. This ends here." He turned to his crew. "All ships, engage the Guardians. Protect Orion's vessel. We're waking up the Forgotten." The Valor's weapons roared to life, blazing beams tearing through the darkness. The rest of the fleet followed, forming a protective perimeter around Orion's ship. But the Guardians were relentless. Their ancient technology shrugged off human firepower, weapons pulsing with energies that bent space. Human ships exploded, brilliant flashes against the black void. Orion's ship continued to shift, panels opening to reveal massive conduits of light. Power surged through the ancient vessel, its core igniting with a blinding glow. Drake's console flared with warnings. Vega shouted, "Energy output off the scale! It's rewriting itself!" The ship was transforming, reshaping into a weapon from a forgotten war. Orion's voice was steadier now, infused with purpose. "They erased us, but they could not destroy us. We were built to defy them." The conduits fired, beams of pure reality-warping energy slicing through the Guardians. Space twisted around the blasts, the ancient constructs shattering as existence itself rejected them. But the architects watched, unmoved. Their forms shifted, their shadows growing. One reached out, a tendril of darkness that engulfed two human warships. They folded in on themselves, collapsing into singularities and winking out of existence. Drake's heart raced. They weren't just powerful, they controlled the fabric of space and time. Orion's voice came again, urgent. "You cannot fight them here. They are rooted to this reality. We must sever their connection." Drake's eyes widened. "How?" Orion's ship shuddered, more ancient plates falling away, revealing a massive gate at its core. "Through the source, to the heart of the architect's domain, to the place where they reshape worlds." The gate powered up, spiraling vortexes of energy coalescing at its center. The architects reacted, shifting, their tendrils reaching out to stop it. Drake barked the order. "All ships defend Orion, buy him time!" The human fleet surged, fighting with desperation. Ship after ship fell, but the architects' attacks slowed. the vortex drawing their energy toward it. Orion's voice was firm, resolute. "I will take us there, but once inside you must destroy the anchor, sever them from our universe." Drake hesitated. "And what happens to you?" A pause. Then, "We were never meant to exist." "Once the anchor is gone, so are we." The weight of it crushed Drake's chest. Orion and his people were remnants, echoes of a timeline erased. But they were humanity's only hope. Drake stood tall. "Then let's finish this." The gate opened, engulfing the Valor and the remaining fleet. The universe bent, reality folding in on itself as they plunged through the vortex. On the other side, they found it, a realm of pure creation, shifting matter and energy woven by cosmic architects. At its center, a colossal structure, pulsing with power. The anchor. The architects descended, their forms unraveling into streams of code and light. Twisting through the realm, they attacked, warping space, shattering ships with a thought. Drake fought through the chaos, pushing the Valor toward the anchor. "Vega, target the core, full power!" The ship's weapons overloaded, energy screaming as they fired everything they had. The anchor shuddered, cracks forming as the realm itself trembled. Orion's ship surged forward, its own power focused into a final, devastating blast. For those erased, for those forgotten. The beam struck the anchor, reality shattered. The architects howled, their forms breaking apart, cascading into nothingness. The realm collapsed, folding inward. As the vortex pulled them out, Drake caught one last glimpse of Orion's ship, standing resolute against the end of existence. Then it was gone. The Valor emerged back into real space, the void eerily quiet. The wreckage was gone, the Guardians dissolved. The architects were no more, but so were the forgotten. Vega whispered, "He did it. He saved us." Drake looked out into the darkness, the weight of sacrifice heavy on his shoulders. "Number they saved themselves." He stood straight, his voice firm. "And we will remember them." The HSS Valor turned toward Earth, the stars silent witnesses to the end of a war that had erased itself from time. But history would remember the forgotten, and humanity would never be unshaped again.